This is the Cyber Brisket Podcast, serving up what's hot in IT so your business doesn't get cooked.
Today on Cyber Brisket, we have Bob Abrams, an account executive over at Hats AI, helping organizations turn AI pilots into scalable, measurable deployments, formerly at Huntress, another great partner of ours. He brings a cybersecurity first lens to AI adoption, focused on reducing risk, strengthening operations, and aligning stakeholders across business and technical teams. Wow. Bob Abrams, always good to see you. Thanks for joining us on Cyber Brisket.
Glad to be here, and thanks for having me on, Chris, and appreciate the partnership.
Yeah, me too. I remember we had you on one of our peer groups recently, and that had to be the longest peer group I think we ever had. I mean, I think that thing lasted almost 2 hours.
It went for a while, and they usually do. Folks are looking to leverage AI and go to market with AI and empower users to use it as part of their day-to-day and their regular workflow. So yeah, that was a fun session.
Yeah, very rarely do I ever find other IT guys really wanting to dig into a tool like that. I mean, AI is all the rage right now, and rightfully so, because it's doing some pretty cool stuff for a lot of people. So I actually have some questions here prepared for you that I'd like to run through.
Sure, sounds good.
Where do most AI pilots break down when organizations try to scale them? And what signals tell you early that a pilot is headed for trouble?
Yeah, great question. So, where do they break down? And we're all still learning this whole AI thing, and it continues to change. New models every single day. You hear about the latest and greatest, and folks trying to figure out where to start and how to keep up. But in terms of pilots and folks starting to use AI, figure out where does it fit into their business, how can they operationalize it? There's a few things that are common threads there. The biggest one is the business owner, C-suite, the folks that are driving the business, responsible for overall sales, marketing, technical, basically running and keeping it growing and doing what that business does for a living, is they typically will toss it over to the tech folks, who tend to treat it as an experiment of sorts, not looking at it for business deployments and how do you integrate it. And we'll hit more of that as we go through the conversation. But looking at AI as just an adjunct to be able to help folks operate more efficiently, drive a competitive edge, and drive all aspects of the business. Sales, marketing, of course, technical, operation, orchestration, workflows, all that. But when you look at all of that, you can't treat it as an experiment in a silo or in a sandbox. You've really got to look at it as really assisting that particular business and assisting each individual employee in that organization to do their job more efficiently, do it better, and stay a step ahead of everybody else in the competitive field.
Yeah, so part of me thinks that a lot of people think of AI as more or less like a silver bullet, like, okay, we're gonna go buy AI, and now it's gonna make everything better. And it sounds like a little more thought is needed there.
It's a little more thought is needed, at the same time a little less thought, right? We'll hit some of this as we go through the conversation, I'm sure, but folks tend to overcomplicate AI, and it isn't. You just need to talk to it. There's a tongue-in-cheek going around that, and it's very true, is that the English majors are going to finally get their day and get their headlines, because they know how to communicate. They know how to talk to people, and they just talk to AI like it's a person. And AI is all about how you ask the question, and the way you ask the question is the way you're asking me questions, and I would ask others. So just talk to it like it's there, and really to simplify and not overcomplicate. But at the same time, you really want to think about what that pilot needs to be, what you're looking for out of it, identify clear objectives of what you're looking for it to do, and then integrating it within and telling people just to talk to the AI.
Very good. All right, I got another question
Yeah.
for you here.
Yep. One other thought on that one.
Sure.
Sorry, is
Oh, please, please.
the other thing that we see a lot of is no clear ownership, and somebody at the top needs to own, whether it's a pilot, whether it's a proof of concept, whether folks are just turning it on and putting it into the business, but someone from the top needs to own it. And if that ownership is not there, or it's delegated down into the technical folks, or the people that going to go sort of narrow and deep, I call it, and not do a broad sweep across what each individual person's function is, then the project is not going to be as successful. I don't want to say it'll fail, but it's not going to be as successful as it could be. So someone at the top needs to own that pilot, which almost sounds counterintuitive, right? Because the top folks are thinking, okay, pilot, it's technical, let's go, delegate that down or delegate it across to the technical folks. But the ownership's got to be at the top and own that adoption journey, track their employees, who's doing the onboarding, who's investing the time. And we're not talking about a lot of time, but there needs to be a commitment of each individual employee to really make that AI pilot a success. And that ownership really does need to come from the top, the business owner, C-suite, to drive it.
Yeah, that makes sense, because oftentimes folks at the lower levels of the hierarchy are not necessarily looking at outcomes. And really, at the end of the day, it is management, it is the top level people that are 100% focused on outcomes, so they can really hold people accountable.
Yep, spot on. Yep.
Very good.
Yeah.
All right, so we know you have your cybersecurity background, so let's talk about that a little bit. How does a cybersecurity first mindset change the way leaders should evaluate AI vendors and deployments compared to traditional SaaS tools?
Yeah, what a great question to bring in a whole bunch of different points here. So you got the wheels turning. The first thing is AI is not your typical software SaaS product. It's an enabler, right? It's a tool that can be used in any which way that user, employee wants to use it in their particular work function. So if you look at that and you look at what AI can do on the positive side, is it gives and empowers that particular user based on all of their security permissions, whatever they have access to. So if they're tying into, let's say, Microsoft 365, AI needs to be constrained and limited to the access and the privileges that particular user has. So when you look at AI and look at different models or how do you implement it, that security piece of it is so critical, because some of the models that are out there and some of the platforms, you'll turn on 365 across an entire organization, opens up, whether it's inside of the files, whether it's inside of emails, and opening up the keys to the kingdom. And then anybody in that organization, in theory, could ask a question of the AI that they may not realize they have access to certain files. So when you look at that sort of thing and think of traditional software, traditional SaaS product, traditional software, the user is constrained. When you look at what AI empowers them to do on the positive side, is they can now sit there and ask a question and have it look at their 365, maybe look at their CRM, their Salesforce, their HubSpot, whatever they're using, and go on and on and on. And if those security controls are not tied to that user, they could, in theory and in practice, actually accessing things that maybe it's payroll records, who gets paid what, and that sort of thing. So as you look at AI, you've got to make sure that the security policies that are set up will follow what is set up and what you set up for your clients Chris, at the security level. So who can access what, and make sure that AI will follow those and conform to them. Good AI solutions will do that straight out of the box and follow the permissions of that particular user. But that's where it's very different than traditional software. Is you want to empower, you want to open up the possibility of being creative. Just ask, see what you get back, build it, iterate as you go, but making sure that those security constraints are there. The last comment on it, I'll pause there, is the models, typically the free or the at-home solutions, a lot of chat, not a knock on them, but the free chat GPTs, the Geminis, all the stuff that folks are typically bringing to the office, what's called ShadowAI, is a disaster waiting to happen, right? They bring that at-home solution to the insecure solution, ask ChatGPT to analyze a spreadsheet that might have confidential information in it. So what you want to do with AI is make sure that the models are secure, make sure that they're not learning, they're not being trained as they start to look at implementing AI.
Right. So I'm hearing two different things there. One, well, not two different things, but 2 points. And one of them is people are probably bringing their home stuff to work and potentially uploading company assets to those personal and free AI models and there's no control over that, what's going on there.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second thing that I was thinking about as you were talking is the security of the vendor itself. How are they keeping that information safe from other folks leveraging the platform and the models?
Exactly. Yep. And not a commercial, but just to make the point of the way that you can protect that. What HATS does is we host the models inside of our secure AWS environment, so the models are not being trained, they're not learning from the input that that the employees are putting into that. So just again, by way of example, but to have something that is secure, in our case, we're SOC 2 Type 2 certified. So knowing and asking the questions, where's the data stored? Where are the models stored? Are the models learning and being trained by those prompts? And make sure that they are not with the environment of the platform that you're looking to.
And you guys, to just to further clarify that, are able to more or less enclave the information from each customer so that it's not accessible from one customer to a next.
Correct. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Very good. Very good. Yeah. All right. So what's the biggest gap you see between business leaders' expectations of AI and what technical teams can realistically deliver? And how do you help align those two?
So, and we've hit some of this as we built to this question, but if you look at expectations of going back to traditional software, traditional SaaS products, whether it's payroll, your CRM, medical software, whatever it is that you're using for traditional software, it's a different process. In that environment, you spec it, you build it, and then you adopt it, and you're done. And then it just continues to get used, over and over again in the constraints. Reflecting back to where we were a few minutes ago, AI is wide open by design, and that's where the return is. But what happens is the expectation of some folks is kind of spec it, build it, implement it, and it stops. The beauty of AI is it doesn't stop. It iterates. It even iterates within the same question that's being asked or the same, prompt or chat. So you'll ask it a question and then it'll come back and you'll refine it, or it's not quite what you meant. And back to the English major, example again, right? You realize that you use something that's an expression we might use, and AI takes it literally, goes off in the wrong tangent. So you're going to continue to iterate that, and then you'll get your product that's nowhere close to being finished because you're going to continue to build it, refine it, use that example use case. So back to the biggest gap is folks go into it thinking that, well, this is great. I'm going to dream it. I'm going to build it myself with a platform, which is easy to do these days, or have somebody build it, and then they're going to deliver it. And that's traditional software. In AI's case, by empowering that individual user, that process never stops by design and by choice, because you keep on getting better and better results out of it. And the models keep on getting better. There's an expression that the models are the LLMs, the large language models, the LLMs that we're using today. That's your ChatGPT and your Claude, all the different Gemini, all the different products out there. The expression is that these are the worst LLMs that we will ever use again in our lifetime.
Sure.
They just keep getting better and better and better. I mean, Claude is out there and just released 4.7 a couple of weeks back, and I noticed NVIDIA now is in the LLM game, which makes a whole lot of sense, and they're driving it. So there's all sorts of different products that keep evolving, but the use cases, the examples. So back to the gap is folks look at it as there's a starting point and there's an ending point, which is traditional software, implementation. Not the case with AI. So you really need to look at it completely differently, with keeping your eyes open, keeping that horizon constantly changing and moving.
Very good. Very good. Yeah, I hear that.
Yeah.
I have another question for you.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
In your experience, what distinguishes organizations that turn AI into measurable operational impact from those that remain stuck in experimentation? That's a good one, because I think a lot of people just spend a lot of time experimenting on things, and they never really, they never really get up to speed. They're just kind of spinning their wheels.
Yeah. Yeah. And that kind of ties into the last question a little bit as well, right? You have to look at it as looking at business outcomes, which you mentioned before, Chris, right? The top level down. And success is about those business outcomes. What can you change? And they don't need to be, grandiose, workflows and chat engineers and all that. Again, just, speak to the AI, but focus on what's the business outcome. So if you start today with what's in my regular day to day, and when I was first, starting to put AI and hats in my case into my regular workflow, as I started to do something, could be looking at emails, could be going into my Salesforce, looking at my accounts, I would stop myself and say, you know what, can I use AI? To use AI. And it's, yes, you can, right? So if you start to put AI into your regular day to day, and then about to do something like, you know what, I need to review my emails and prioritize those, which is what we all do, right? We kind of go through and fly through, but we're doing them linearly. Wouldn't it be nice if I could get the hotter ones up to the top, and the hotter ones would probably tie in to my CRM. It might tie in if I've got call recordings, tie into those. I'm going to tie into my calendar. And you could do something like, go ahead and look at my inbox and reference my 365, in my case, my CRM, which is Salesforce, and look at my Fireflies recordings. And I want you to prioritize who I need to talk to first. And by the way, tell me what my response might look like based on where I left off. So if you do that sort of thing, that's a real use case that I do every day. At 12:01, I get that in my inbox, actually. I'm not up then, it's first thing in the morning. So if you look at that sort of thing, and we're going to go down the first path, which everybody wants to go to, which is looking at, very specific. I got to make it perfect. I got to figure out the use case. Take the example that I just took you through. That's going to be far from perfect when I first take a shot at that. but it's going to be a whole lot better than going email by email and then figuring out, because I may miss and not get to the real important one that's at the bottom until later today, or worst case tomorrow or the next day, right? Because we all get caught up in that, email routine. So it leads me to good enough is good enough at the beginning. It doesn't need to be perfect. And what folks will do is the ones that are not as impactful and not seeing the greatest benefit out of it, they're chasing perfection. They set themselves up. They put on unrealistic KPIs. They delegate it to maybe the engineers. And the engineers, by the way, might be really, really, really good at AI, and they can write all kinds of crazy stuff. But at the end of the day, they're not as good as a Chris or a Bob or the admin, the controller, having a little bit of knowledge of the AI, but having a ton of knowledge on their workflow and what they do. Their end result of that good enough would, let's go to the controller. The controller using AI at a base to intermediate level, pretty simple stuff, is going to wind up with a much better AI work product than the super smart prompt engineer that doesn't know anything about the controller's job. So when you wrap all that together, start with good enough as a mindset, and then keep on iterating from there versus trying to make it perfect and hit all the right check boxes. You'll never get there.
Yeah, I get that. So a lot of the engineers are very highly focused folks and not necessarily, or may not necessarily have purview of the broader business process. And that would inhibit them from being able to produce the results that folks are looking for.
Yeah, spot on. I mean, you really want, I think the tagline on that one is, AI needs to live where people work. And if it does, and it's easy to use, easy to adopt, the end result for that C-suite business leader across all of the employees now being able to adopt AI, putting it in their workflow, putting AI in where they work, that end result is going to be a whole lot better than trying to come straight out of the box, very technical, and make it perfect. So the AI today is very different than where AI was 6 months or a year ago. They're just becoming so interactive, user-friendly, non-threatening, where you really can start to put it in everybody's workflow.
And the comment you made about people wanting it to be perfect before they let it go, that resonates a lot with me, because as I've worked on developing AI in our processes, I start with certain expectations, and then oftentimes those expectations are very high. And then as I start working on it and developing it, then I find myself I find myself needing to lower my expectations a little bit just to match where the technology is right now. But that's still a lot better than where I was.
Right.
And although it's incremental, the speed at which this stuff is developing is astronomical. So it's just something where it's like, okay, well, we have this right now, and the gap between where we are now and where I initially wanted to be is going to get closed over time as the models develop.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So last question I have for you. As AI becomes embedded into core workflows, what new types of risk are most underestimated by executives today?
There's a couple things in there, not which we talked about before, but not realizing that AI not properly secured within their environment, right? The tie into, let's say, Microsoft 365, Google, whatever, but
Oh,
not
sure.
realizing.
I'm going to interrupt you real quick
Yeah,
because something just popped in my mind, and it's
yeah,
it's it's a story that's hot right now while we're
yeah,
recording, and
yeah.
that is oh gosh, somebody let like a Claude model out in their company, and within a matter of seconds deleted the entire production database for this company. I think it was like well, I think it was like 9 seconds or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, perfect bad example, good example of a bad situation, right? But yeah, that's exactly, the point is that you've got to realize that you want to empower, you want to open up, but you've got to have the right security controls in there so they don't delete the entire database as they did in that case. And it technically is possible, and making sure that the exec realizes that you've got to work with the right partner to be able to make sure that their infrastructure is properly secure, that you've got your use policies in place, you've got all of your permissions, role-based access, all the things that Engler sets up for your clients and other technology providers would set up. You've got to make sure that that's tight. Along those same lines, the data, there's a lot of old software out there. I come from a mainframe background back in the days with all this gray hair, and
Hey, at least you
still
have some.
I got some out there. Yeah, it's yeah, exactly. Yeah, and there's still green screen software that's out there, and folks trying to harness old SQL databases and all sorts of things. So at the executive level, they need to realize that you've got to invest to make sure that, first of all, the data is structured to be able to get easy access to it. But on the security front, to realize that if you open up that entire database, then the potential risk is there that if you don't have the controls, folks could access all of that, and not realizing again that AI is kind of an operating system of sorts, right? When you look at what it's doing, I mean, there are workflows and use cases that are great that are set up for the different industries, and but at the end of the day, to really empower AI, you've got to think of it as an enabler. It's a platform, a foundation to be able to build and work from. But the company, the organization needs to realize that when you provide that kind of access and that kind of empowerment, you've got to have the right controls on the back end.
Yeah,
Um,
you hit on something I think really early on. You called it out when you said roles-based access,
yep.
which
Yeah.
is I mean that's the hot topic now. You see that everywhere. You see RBAC, everywhere is RBAC, and it totally makes sense. So one of the things that I'll share a story about what we did internally when we were, once I started hearing about like Clawbot and Claude Cowork and all that kind of stuff. And they're talking about how, okay, this thing, if you install it in your computer, it can do anything that your computer has access to. So
Yeah.
my thought is, okay, I don't want to install this on a computer that I'm signed into because I don't want this thing to have everything I have access to. So, and here's a tip for anybody listening. This could be even be a best practice for when you're rolling things out, and that is, I created an account just for just for the application, say, okay, this is called Claude. So I made a Claude Cowork account. I gave it its own computer and I installed it on there and I started giving it things to do. And now I've got control over what it has access to. I just share it with Cowork or whatever it is that I'm working with at the time. So roles-based access really is important.
Yeah. It is, and then a good AI model will follow those, and realizing that you're opening it up or limiting it to, depending on what's been set up ahead of time within that IT and that infrastructure.
Yeah, and then my mind is also kind of moving into the compliance realm here too, because every time you do anything, and like, so if you run a company and you are uh, you have a governing body in your industry that makes you follow certain types of regulations that you have to comply with. Every time you plug something into your network, every time you buy a new piece of equipment, a new piece of software, whether it's AI or not, you have to vet it. You have to go through all of your controls that you're beholden to when you're saying that you're compliant and making sure that it matches all of those things.
Yeah, and along those same lines, you talk about the compliance, and certain industries have certain requirements for data retention, and being able to get to logs in case there's some kind of by requirement or investigation. Finance is a great example of that. To be able to go back and the platform, you look at your regular security stack and tying in again. I come from that space, but you look at being able to go back in the case of maybe a cybersecurity incident, pull logs, look at the history, try to figure out where the root cause was. Same thing will apply to AI. Everything is kept private and secure within the company, the individual user and the company's tenant, their environment. But there are times that you might have to log or go back. So you'd want to make sure that to meet some of those requirements, that even though it's kept in a private environment, what's the access to it? How far back does it go? Can you pull chats? That sort of thing. So having that logging may be a requirement for some of the compliance requirements. And as you look at AI, easy to use, simple to use, everyone can use it. But at the end of the day, if there's a compliance requirement to track all that, you need to make sure that the platform that you're adopting and setting up would support, logging as an example.
Sure. Yeah. And in most cases, that is the case. So this has been a great conversation, and I do want to give you an opportunity to talk about hats here for a moment, because I think it's a really cool platform. We use it, and it's model agnostic, which is really interesting. It gives you access to all these things. So if you want to talk about hats for a moment, please do.
What an opening. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, it's absolutely. I mean, Hats is unique in the sense that it solves multiple problems that are brewing and existent today. The first one is there's a term called ShadowAI that I mentioned before, and that's your folks bringing their at-home solution or the free solution to the office. So again, Chat GPT, Gemini, all of those are learning and training from that data. So if it's not in a paid or secure model, which they all provide as well, there's that shadow AI. Chris and the team can actually run. There's look at DNS logs, look at firewall logs, and get an idea how much shadow AI is out there in an organization. And usually it's pretty eye-opening. No one gets thrown under the bus, but not by name, but it'll say, hey, you got 10 people using ChatGPT and 4 people using Claude, and bringing all that free stuff in. What Hats is going to do is harness all of that, give you access to all of the LLMs, all of the models that are out there today. So Claude, Gemini, Chat, all the latest and greatest. So Opus 4.7 came out recently, Nano Banana underneath Gemini for image creation. So Hats is a single platform, single interface, easy prompts, just speak to it like you would an assistant, and it will access and choose the best model for that particular request that you put in. And then when the new model comes out, we add it, typically same day to next day, the latest, all at a fixed cost. You don't need to keep on worrying about adding in the latest LLM. So a lot of folks now are evaluating Claude, a lot of folks looking at Gemini, ChatGPT. With Hats through Engler, you don't need to worry about that. You get access to all of those at a fixed price. The other piece of it that we solve for is, I talked before about the example and the use case that I have, and I'm tying in my 365 and my recordings and my Salesforce. All of those integrations on the back end, I think we're up to like 60 plus at this point. So almost any software that you're using today, you can tie in to Hats, all with a very simple prompt. So you're going to bring together all the models, all your back-end tools in a nice, easy to use platform. And we've hit it a few times, in a secure, in our case, SOC 2 Type 2 certified, a secure platform. So the models are not learning or being trained by your confidential and sensitive data in those prompts.
Yeah, so the thing I was thinking about when you said that, having to do with well, hey, because these models are always trying to outdo each other, and it's like, okay, well, this, right now, this is the model that you use for image generation, or was it like Gemini?
Yeah.
Like let's just say Gemini,
Yeah.
best for image generation right now, and it's like, okay, Claude, it's best for this other task right now.
Research, deep dive, analysis. Yep. Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to worry about going out and say, okay, I want the best I need the best images, so I want to get a Gemini subscription, and then I want the best XYZ, so I need that subscription. So with Hats, you have access to all those things through a single subscription.
Correct. You got it.
Yeah.
Yep. That's it.
Really cool stuff.
You can empower every user. We have an onboarding, there's training and onboarding that gets folks up and running. So when you look at access to all of that, easy interface, just speak to it, just talk like we are here today. And then being able to pull all of that together in that single platform as a business owner, going to wind up with adoption across, all or most of the employees being able to put AI into their day to day at any level. We have a crawl, walk, run process. You start off, crawl is pretty powerful, just asking it at a chat level. You can then, as folks start to move up and do more and more with it, hats will meet that user where they are. So if they're at crawl or crawl the walk, you got some power users all the way up at run and beyond. That's great. Same platform, same interface, having access to every single LLM today and tomorrow as the new ones come out.
Awesome. Bob, really appreciate your time.
This has been fun. This is great. Appreciate you having me on. Yeah. And reach out, Chris, for whatever you need. Here to help.
Will do.
All right. Take care.